So after the early nationalists and other details, and here we have just studied the reasons, and later let us study who are these early nationalists and how this movement came up. So the assertive nationalists. Okay, so assertive means like people who are having belief in what they do. They're very sure about what they believe. So this kind of assertive nationalists, their methodology of leading the national movement was different. So historians, they have categorized national movement under second phase for this reason. As these assertive nationalists, their ideologies and set of methods to lead national movement was different compared to the early nationalists. This movement was referred as second phase of national movement. That means from here onwards, when assertives of Indian National Congress, when they tried to introduce new methods of national movement, it's a different set of phase. So that was referred as second phase of national movement. So who are included in this? A very young group of leaders within the Congress are included in this. Who are these assertive nationalists? They are at a young age and they are members of Congress. And they were also referred as angry young men. So because they showed maximum resistance to the British policies. So even if it is beyond law, they used to openly show their angriness and resistance. And within Congress, they never liked these early nationalists. So naturally, they're labeled as angry young men. And what did this early nationalists want? So within Congress, these early nationalists were a group of people. So what did they want? They want complete Swaraj. So what do they want? They want complete Swaraj. On what methods they want complete Swaraj? Self-reliant methods. What do you mean by self-reliant methods? That means, see, like early nationalists, they don't want to take the help of British in solving or in uh, making Indians free. So they don't want to do the practices of early nationalists. So what they said, they want complete Swaraj, as well as how they want to attain that Swaraj or freedom through self-reliant methods. That means believing in their own strength, and with that strength only they wanted to get their freedom. So another important thing they wanted was mass base for their movement. That means they wanted to involve the common people of India, unlike early nationalists. So these early nationalists, what they did, they involved only the middle class people, educated people, like this. They never involved the common illiterate people. So assertive said we need to involve the mass base, that means the common people also into the movement. And because of all such things, they were known as the assertive nationalists. They were so called because they had a different outlook. So they had a different outlook in solving the problems of Indians or in dealing with British. Hence, they were called assertive nationalists. So how did they want to deal with British? They wanted to give active resistance to British imperialism. So how do this assertive national want to act with British? They wanted to show active resistance. Whereas early nationalists, what they do, they give petitions, requests, but they wanted to give resistance to British imperialism. And they also said, the assertives also believed, this is a common point between early nationalists and assertive nationalists. What they both believed, that the economic condition of India is because of British rule in India. So all the Indian suffering is because of British rule in India. That they agreed. But here an extent early nationalists also believed that this, but they said they have faith on British. They called upon the people of India to make sacrifices for the sake of their country. So they said, make sacrifices for the sake of country. So on one hand, they wanted to give active resistance to British. On the other hand, they wanted common people to join the movement, and they want all the people to make sacrifices. So unless and otherwise you make sacrifices, Swaraj will be only a theoretical concept. So they said, make sacrifices for what you want. Unless you sacrifice something, you don't get what you deserve. And who are the important leaders in this assertive nationalism? That we are going to learn now. They are Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bipin Chandra Pal. So these three people are called Lal Bal Pal trio because their set of ideology and their way of their outlook towards British was similar, and they worked together most of the time, and hence this they were popularly called as Lal Bal Pal trio. So what are the causes for the rise of assertive nationalism? So there are certain causes why this assertive group of congressmen emerged. What are those things? Recognition of the true nature of British rule. So early nationalist leaders, okay, to understand why our assertives have emerged, we need to understand where this early nationalists have failed and succeeded. So this paragraph will describe that point. So to make early nationalist leaders, what were their methods of agitation? Writings, agitation, and petitions, right? So through these methods, early nationalists, what they did, they exposed the true character of British rule in India. This was the achievement of early nationalists, and also felt that British rule was responsible for the economic ruin of India and growing poverty. So this was a truth established, or which is known to even the early nationalists, that because of British rule and policies, India is slipping into a poverty nation. So this was the exposed character of Britishers by early nationalists. And so the political events from 1892 to 1905 that proves, see, how do you know that? So this is one kind of exposure of truth. Another British truth which is exposed was they were trying to, instead of giving us more rights, what the British were doing, they were taking away even their few existing rights. So here, to understand the another concept, what we have to understand is, on one hand, poverty is responsible because of British, poverty is happening in India. On the other hand, instead of giving Indians more rights, what the Britishers are doing, they are taking away even the existing rights. How do you know that they are taking away the existing rights instead of giving more rights? Here you can see reduction in the number of Indian members in Calcutta Corporation and restrictions on the press. So these events will prove that, see, politically they don't want Indians to enter, and keeping restrictions on freedom of press will also suppress Indian voice. So these things will prove that they are not, instead of giving more rights, they are taking away the existing rights. So these two are the exposed things, and all this convinced Indians that India could not make progress unless British imperialism was replaced by a government run by them. So people, they understood now that India cannot make progress, or India can, what the early nationalists believed in the beginning, if Britishers stay, then India may also progress industrially. But with these two things, like poverty on the one hand and restrictions on the other hand, it was proved that India could not make progress unless this British imperialistic nature goes away from there. That means exploitation and all this kind of policy, if they don't take away, and if a government comes, until a government comes for the people, this British people cannot do justice to them. So this strongly went inside people. So assertive ideology was very much close to this kind of concept. So assertives believe that British should get away from India. Only then India can progress. So now it matched with the belief of Indians. So hence assertive nationalists got a chance from the masses, or the common people got a lot of support from this assertive nationalists, and this became a reason for the rise of assertive nationalism. So, and failure of early nationalists. So early nationalists also failed in certain areas, and in what areas their failure was responsible for emergence of assertive nationalists, that we will see now. See, the younger elements, these assertives are called younger people in Congress, Indian National Congress Party. They were dissatisfied with the achievements of early nationalists. So what happens here is, these younger men or the assertive nationalists, they were dissatisfied. Why they were dissatisfied? With what they dissatisfied? Achievements. Whose achievements? Early nationalist achievements. So why they were dissatisfied? Because they were not yielding results. So in spite of petitions and other things, the British went on doing the Bengal division and other things. So the younger people who are with some kind of young blood, they were not happy with the achievements of early nationalists. So what they did, they criticized peaceful constitutional agitational methods. So after they understood that these early nationalist methods are not working, they started criticizing the methods adopted by early nationalists. What was the method of early nationalists? Peaceful constitutional agitation. So this was not liked by the assertive nationalists. So instead of peaceful constitutional methods, these younger congressmen or early nationalists demanded for revolutionary methods. That means we have to take a revolution against the Britishers. Unless we take up revolutionary methods, we cannot have freedom. That was believed by these assertives. And early nationalists were loyal to the crown. This was also not liked by the younger congressmen or assertives. And their political objective was improve the chances of getting seats in central provincial legislature or judicial services. See, all these early nationalists, whenever you take, they were very loyal to the crown. They never disobeyed the crown. On the other hand, instead of giving resistance to British, they focused more on getting seats politically, which the assertives felt that it is of no use. And they also criticized early nationalists because these early nationalists have limited, okay, their activities to middle class of the society. These early nationalists never involved the masses or the common people into movement. They only restricted themselves to the middle class of the society, which is a failure. One failure was peaceful constitutional agitation method, another was very loyal to crown, another was always focusing on legislative councils, another was involving only middle class educated people. These are all the failures according to assertives. There were also positive things what early nationalists did, but according to assertives, these are all very very much failures of early nationalists. And also early so what they did, they always tried to get something, the early nationalists, substantial from the British government, led to demand for more vigorous political action using a radical approach. So whatever they demand, even suppose if these early nationalists are demanding something, they demand only substantial, whatever is required. They never felt that it is our right to have everything in this country. They only want substantially whatever is required that they will ask, and they keep quiet. So these assertives consider all these things as a very much failures of the early nationalists, and hence they emerged. And worsening economic conditions. So economic conditions were weakening in India during the time of early nationalists. Even though early nationalists were uh, giving petitions and other such methods, economic condition was still worse. It was becoming day by day worse. How? Through famines. So by the end of 19th century, there were a lot of famines in India, and this famines shows that the economic status of people will be declining. And how many people died because of these famines? 90 lakh people died because of these famines in those days. And see, even if famines occur, governments should come for help. But the governments were not helping. The British imperialistic government was not helping. So India lost some 90 lakh population, which the early nationalists considered very seriously. Sorry, the assertives considered very seriously as a failure of early nationalists. Because of them only, the economic condition, because of their methods, British could not solve the problems, and instead the economic condition was becoming day by day very bad. And government also, it is not doing anything to help the people when they are caught in famines. And instead what they are doing, when famines are very much prevalent in India, they are spending money on the silver jubilee functions of other British occasions. So in celebration of Queen Victoria's throne, accession to throne, all such things, they spent lakh of rupees. We heard about this Delhi Darbar, right? So Lord Lieutenant. So they're spending lakhs on the other side, spending nothing, no money on the famines to help people. So this revealed the Indians their plight of utter helplessness. So people slowly understood that even though early nationalists are working through their methods, but they are no more working for the British, and nobody is coming to their help. So by the ideologies of these assertives, people thought this may help. So all this to anti-national policies followed by British government. So finally people got convinced that it is because of British government all these things are happening. So worsening economic condition, repressive policies of British, it provide a congenial atmosphere. That means a very favorable atmosphere. On one hand, economically the country is declining. On the other hand, the policies are making people to suffer more. So this all made an atmosphere to have a different voice which will address the problems of people. So that created an atmosphere for the rise of assertive nationalism. So these are about the reasons of this is one of the reasons for assertive nationalism, growing of assertive nationalism. And coming to the growing consciousness among Indians. So the nationalist writers, agitators blamed British rule for poverty of people. So writers who write, newspaper articles, and some people used to write books and all. So these writers and agitators means those who protest against the policies of British. They believed that it was British rule that led to poverty in India. And leaders of new ideology made efforts to develop self-respect, self-confidence among the people. Now these assertive nationalists, with their methods, they were able to give self-respect to people. Instead of going and begging Britishers, they can rely on or they can depend on their own self-confidence and self-respect. These two things attracted people. Okay, when assertive nationalists taught this kind of things, it made people to get attracted. So why should we go and request them? Why can't we, fight against them? This kind of self-respect and self-confidence were inculcated in people, and it attracted. This kind of principles attracted uh, common people from assertives. And some assertive nationalist leaders are Aurobindo Ghosh, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bipin Chandra Pal. So they asked the nationalists to rely on the abilities of Indians. So they said, let Indians lead any movement with self-respect and self-confidence. Why do you go and give petitions, request them, beg them, and make your work done? Is it not our duty to believe on our abilities? So they asked people, these leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Aurobindo Ghosh and all, they said, believe in our own strength. And Bipin Chandrapal reminded that people that self-help and self-sacrifice is the real force in the field of nationalism. So Bipin Chandrapal made with a statement very strong opinion that self-help and self-sacrifice, these two only will make India Swaraj, and it can be useful for nationalism, not by petitions, not by requesting, not by making peaceful agitations. This will never give you nationalism and freedom. Only by self-confidence and self-respect, if you fight, then you can get freedom. So this is the growing consciousness among Indians. This kind of consciousness has been identified in the assertive nationalists and people got attracted to them. So need for mass action, that means involving the masses of the country, that means the common people who are majority in population, that is called mass action. So the nationalist leaders taught the people that remedy to their sad condition lay in their own hands. So this was a regular point which they keep on saying, that you should start working on your problem. Don't rely on anybody. Don't rely that the British would come to your help. Don't believe the early nationalist methodology. British would never help you. Instead, to remove your sad conditions that you are having, you should try with your own hands. So they'll believe in self-effort, and they wanted the extending the national movement to the masses. That means this kind of principles and other things, assertives thought we should take it to people, that everybody should understand that only if all people involve on their own and involve in the movement, they can gain something at the end. Supporting this, Swami Vivekananda said, the only hope of India is from the masses. So Swami Vivekananda, who was a social reformer in those days, he also gave a supporting statement that the only hope of India is from the masses. That means if this majority common people change, if they stand up with self-effort and sacrifice, then that's the only hope where India can attain Swaraj. Otherwise, it's a nightmare. The upper classes are physically and morally dead. So he also said that the so-called upper classes or educated people, they are morally dead because they don't have self-respect. They feel that without self-respect, without self-confidence, they are just lying the dignity of India at the feet of British, which he felt it is a very wrong thing. And there was the realization that only the masses could make the immense sacrifices. So also these leaders believed that only masses, that means only common people can make sacrifice, not the so-called leaders which were who were saying that we will change India and we will try to establish peace in India. They can never sacrifice. They'll only be continuously keeping efforts. But here masses will be ready to sacrifice, the majority masses. Only then we can get or win freedom. So this was also believed by assertive nationalists. And influence of international events. So by this time, some international events were also happening which indirectly influenced Indians. What are they? We will see. See, assertive nationalism was inspired by example of international events. So throughout the world, somewhere some incidents might be happening. That incidents might be taken as inspiration by this assertive nationalists, which even attracted common people. What are they? Japan, an Asian country, defeated Russia. Italian forces were defeated by Abyssinians in Ethiopia. In South Africa, the Boers fought for 3 years against the British Empire. So this kind of, see, these are all imperialistic in the beginning, Russia, the British, and Italy, right? These are all imperialistic countries from the beginning, industrial and imperialistic countries. So when these three countries were easily defeated by some Asian countries, and even people could fight, even like people like Boers could fight against British. And in Ireland, if you take an example, they were waging a full-scale home rule agitation from British. Even Ireland was fighting for freedom. So these are all things which were which inspired Indian nationalists. So this all broke the invincibility of the Europeans. Earlier, people used to have a myth, that means a blind belief that European mighty forces cannot be faced. The mighty armies of Europeans cannot be faced. But all these events like Japan defeating Russia, Italy being defeated by Abyssinians, Boers fighting strongly with British, Ireland people fighting against British, these all proved that European forces are not that difficult to handle. They can also fight against the British forces or European forces. So by all such things, assertive nationalists felt that united masses could throw out the British yoke. That means with all people coming together in India, especially the common people, then we can drive the British away from this country. And another factor was growth of education and unemployment. So the number of educated Indians increased considerably by the close of 19th century. So what happens if educated Indians grow? Large number of them employed in the administration on low salaries, while many others faced unemployment. So when educated Indians became more, either they are employed in low salaried jobs or they will be facing unemployment. And their grievances made them to look critically at the nature of British rule. So these unemployed youth and low salaried employees, they were all unhappy and dissatisfied with British. So they also wanted to solve their grievances, that means problems. To solve their problems, they understood what is the nature of British. So low paid or unemployed Indians became followers of assertive nationalism. That means from the government sector and the unemployment sector also, people joined assertives, which added as a very strong factor for them. So ill treatment to of Indians abroad. So abroad means in other foreign countries, especially in England or Britain, Indians were treated very badly. So how they were treated, that we will see. So Indians had helped the British to develop their colonies in other parts of the world. But everywhere, especially in South Africa, Indians were subjected to racial discrimination. So see, how did Indians help the Britishers to form their colonies outside the world? Because they used to take Indian soldiers, a lot of Indian soldiers, to outer wars, even Boer wars in South Africa. They were using, the Britishers were using Indian armies there. So on one hand, they were using Indians for their imperialistic or increase in their colonies, but on the other hand, especially in South Africa, they were treating Indians as a very inferior race. That means they treated Indians as a very low race people. They were denied the right to vote and could not enter into hotels, clubs, buses, or railway coaches, and reserved for the whites. So on one hand, they are taking the help of Indians in expansion of their colonies, but on the same side, they were treating us very bad. How they treated us bad? That we should not vote and we cannot enter into hotels, clubs, buses, or railway coaches where there is a reservation for a white man. If white man is being reserved a particular railway coach, and these Indians are not supposed to enter. In a bus, if a seat is reserved for a white man, then these people are not supposed, Indians are not supposed to enter into that bus. So hotels also, there are separate seats for white men and Indians, or the Britishers and Indians. And also this discriminatory meted out to Indians in British colonies was resented by Indians and led to the rise of assertive nationalism. So this kind of ill treatment was felt as very much hurting, and even in other places they all started supporting the assertive nationalists because they felt that this kind of behavior cannot be tolerated just by petitions and all such things. They wanted to show their resistance, and that resistance can be possible through the young Indian congressmen called assertive nationalists. You can see a picture here, waiting room for white only. Okay, so by police department they are keeping this. That means you can see how racial people these Britishers are. And existence of a nationalist school of thought. See, a school of nationalism had existed in the country from almost the beginning of the national movement. This school was represented by leaders like Raj Narayan Bose, Ashwini Kumar Dutt in Bengal, and Vishnu Shastri Chiplunkar in Maharashtra. These nations found an opportunity to lead the second stage of national movement at the dawn of 20th century. So what do you mean by national school of thought? That means here leaders like this Raj Narayan Bose and Vishnu Shastri and these all people, they were very much educated, and they were the people who were training Indians to have these nationalistic concepts. Okay, so these concepts, when they were taught, and they understood how the you know early nationalist methods are failure, and slowly what they did, they also came to the movement because they were the people who teach all these things. So this is a good chance for them to enter into national movement, to start second phase of national movement. The most outstanding leaders were from this school was, school in the sense it's a like training institute you can call. So Lokmanya Tilak, Bipin Chandrapal, Aurobindo Ghosh, and Lala Lajpat Rai. Such great assertive nationalists were from this kind of thought school. So this leader considered no personal sacrifice too great for the good for the country. So these leaders who came from this kind of training institutes or this kind of ideology, they believed that their self-sacrifice is not so great. Even if these leaders sacrifice, they don't consider it as a very great thing because that's for the good of the country. They feel that it is a responsibility. It doesn't add greatness to their effort. They only feel that it is for our good of country. Why should we feel great about it? We should feel only, I mean, like not that it's not something personal greatness for them. It's for the country they are working. They declared Swaraj or independence as the goal of national movement. In early nationalist movement, when early nationalists were there, there was no such you know complete independence and other such concepts. They know that they wanted to progressively get Swaraj, but getting complete Swaraj, making British to leave as early as possible is the immediate goal of these assertives, and they used all their energy towards achieving the goal. So even their goal was that, so they spent all the methods, they designed all the methods to go in that way only. And repressive policies of Lord Curzon. Naturally, some of these viceroys of British, they, with their administration, they have caused a lot of resentment or lot of dissatisfaction in Indians with their policies or methods. And Lord Curzon was one such viceroy who added fuel to the fire. What he did, his 7-year rule in India was full of repressive measures. That means suppressing the movement, bringing about some kind of unwanted laws or bringing about unwanted things. These all things were being done by this man. What did he did? He was not in favor of giving freedom to India because he believed that English were destined to rule over India. So this man, Curzon, he believes himself as a superior racial man, and he believed that Indians were destined. That means, sorry, English were destined. That means it is a Britishers' responsibility to rule India, and they feel that shows that Indians can't rule themselves. So he believed that only British can save India. This kind of attitude was there. He took several repressive measures. What are they? The Act of 1898, which made it an offense to provoke people against British. So if anybody provokes people against Britishers, then they are punishable. That act was called Act of 1898. Through any medium, you take newspapers, you take a meeting, or you take a rally, anything, anything you make against the British, that is an offense. That is, it is punishable. So Act of 1898 was brought by this man. Calcutta Corporation Act, which reduced the strength of elected members from India, so thereby giving British a majority. So this man believed that Indians doesn't need political active participation. So Calcutta Corporation Act, he brought this act and reduced the number of Indians in this Calcutta Corporation, and he wanted to politically demoralize Indians, and he wanted to show up the majority of British. And the Official Secrets Act, okay, so that means any person who is working in the government. So this Official Secrets Act, no, Generally, this is maintained to make sure that the information in government is not leaked outside. So by this act, the Britishers restricted Indian servants or any government servant who is working for British should not disclose any information to the enemies. And the Indian Universities Act of 1904 was also brought by this man. According to this act, he wanted to impose strict official control over Indian universities because they are the centers of nationalism. The educated Indian youth who are reading in universities or who are getting education in universities, they were very much involved in these activities of nationalistic movements. So to stop them from involving in such things, he implemented Indian Universities Act of 1904. So all these measures created a resentment in India. So one is 1898 Act, Calcutta Corporation Act, Official Secrets Act, and Indian Universities Act. These all were imposed by or brought by Lord Curzon, which made Indians to feel more dissatisfied with Britishers. So partition of Bengal. So this we have studied in detail in the beginning itself. So who did it? Lord Curzon's decision. So and how this assertive nationalist got a good popularity is through this Bengal movement only. So assertive nationalist movement became very popular by the anti-partition Bengal movement, and Lord Curzon was the person who decided to divide Bengal. So his decision was administrative convenience, but his intention was to divide Hindu and Muslim nationalists. So this resulted in widespread protest and agitation. So people protested and launched Swadeshi and boycott movements. So assertive nationalists attracted the huge masses of Bengal through the Swadeshi and boycott movements. People liked it so much, and assertives gained so much popularity with this Swadeshi and boycott concepts. And even though these protests were put down with severe oppression methods, even though the British tried to suppress these movements, these Swadeshi and boycott movements were launched on a large scale in Bengal, and they were a huge success. And Curzon's disregard for public opinion gave ample evidence that early nationalist policy of petitions, prayers, protests could not produce any results. So on one hand, Lord Curzon was not valuing any public opinion, right? He divided Bengal without taking public opinion. But early nationalists, on the other hand, they were still giving petitions, prayers, and all. On one hand, when they know that they are not giving any importance to public opinion, how do you think these early nationalist methods would work? It won't work, right? So, when they won't work, the assertive methods were giving some kind of confidence. So, there is no other go for people and except accepting this assertive methods which will gain popularity. And what was the main objective of early nationalists? The main objective was immediate attainment of Swaraj. Okay, what was the main goal of I said immediate attainment, not just progressive. Whereas early nationalists said progressive, they wanted to make slowly Swaraj. For them, for ascetics, it is immediate attainment. That means complete independence, not just self-government as colonies of Australia, not just like self-government as in the colonies. That means there in Australia and New Zealand, their government is allowed, but still British will be monitoring them. So this they don't want. The assertive said we want complete independence. You leave our country, we will govern ourselves. This was meant to be complete independence. But in New Zealand and Australia, what they were doing, they were just monitoring and they framed some governments there, British. So they don't want such kind of thing. They don't want even the monitoring. And what methods were assertive nationalists using? So what was the methods that these people have used? That we will study now. The main focus of assertive nationalists was to get larger share for Indians in the administration. So their goal was let us involve Indians, larger share. Indians should be more in the councils, and They want to end British economic exploitation by that way. If more number of legislators of Indians are in councils, then naturally they can stop the laws made to exploit the Indian resources. So they wanted more Indians to be in the councils. So, but these objectives could not be possible without pressure tactics and some sort of direct action. So to make the councils and other things for India to have a larger share, you cannot, through request, you cannot achieve those things. You can achieve the objectives only by direct action, and you should keep pressure on Britishers. You cannot just wait and watch. You should keep some pressure, and you should resort to direct action if necessary. Hence, they adopted the policy of non-cooperation and resistance to unjust acts of British government. This non-cooperation is a very important tool designed by this assertiveness. Suppose if government employees are working for British, we should do non-cooperation. That means we should not go to office from next day, so that all the work will come to halt and the British will try to understand. And even all the working class people who are working for the Britishers in various sectors, all the workers, laborers, if they do the non-cooperation, the British cannot, exploit easily. They are depending on Indians for exploitation also. So they gave new slogans to the national movement like non-cooperation, passive resistance, mass agitation, self-reliance. So these are all the things which we are studying from the beginning. Non-cooperation is not helping British in exploitation, either in any way, and mass agitation, self-reliance. That means involving masses, and we should depend on our own strength. These methods adapted them are grouped into four categories. How many categories? Four categories. What is first one? Swadeshi was one method. Producing necessary items in one's own country and using them for one's use without being dependent on imported goods. So the concept of Swadeshi is use our own country made goods. So Indian made goods should be used, and imported goods should be stopped from using. This idea was popularized by occasional bona fides of foreign cloth, salt and sugar. That means how this idea is spread among people, this method, they bring all the, suppose if foreign clothes are there, they bring all the foreign clothes into road, burn them on the road itself. That will show how Indians were dissatisfied against the policies of British. So Swadeshi means using our own Indian made goods and boycotting foreign goods. So that is an important step taken by assertives. That's one method. And second method was boycott of foreign goods. See, when Swadeshi and boycott are two sides of the same coin, we can call it like, you cannot expect boycott without Swadeshi, and you cannot follow Swadeshi unless you boycott things. So he said, Tilak said, when you accept Swadeshi, you must boycott foreign goods. That shows that they are all, this is contemplate. I mean, this is like what you can call complementary to each other. The decision of boycotting, when you accept Swadeshi goods, that means you must boycott foreign goods. Economic boycott of British goods and use of Swadeshi were designed to encourage Indian industries, provide people with more opportunities. See, naturally, when you boycott foreign goods and foreign industries and other things, some people will lose employment. To what do you call pacify them, or to just show them an alternative, what happened was Indians were encouraged to set up industries. Some Indians who were very rich, they were encouraged, they were requested to start more industries for people of India. And also it has paved an important effective weapon for harming the British interest in India. See, it is not a very small step. Boycott of foreign goods will disturb the economy of Britain. If economy of Britain is disturbed, then their roots will be shaken. So this step was a very, very important step taken by assertives. Lala Lajpat Rai said, "We desire to turn our faces away from Government House and turn them to huts of people." This is a spiritual significance of boycott movement. See, now if we show that non-cooperation and this kind of dissatisfaction to Britishers, they will definitely look on our side what we are doing. So that shows our strength. So that is the significance of boycott movement. So this was a statement given by uh, Lala Lajpat Rai. And national education was also another important method used by assertives. A national scheme of education was planned to replace government-controlled universities. So the Indians thought, the assertive nationalists, they have popularized, they have taken the slogan of setting up of Indian universities. So that instead of British-controlled universities, they want more Indianized universities. They try to enlist the students in their service. So if these universities are under the control of Indians, the nationalists can take help of students who are very active in such things, especially national movements. And if the British control them, they cannot do all these things. But when the British government threatened to take disciplinary actions against students, national leaders advocated national universities that were free from government control. So naturally, when British felt, I said that Lord Curzon brought the Universities Act 1904, which prohibits any student involving in any agitation. So this kind of things, when they were introduced, naturally the assertive nationalists thought we should have a university or we should have our own schooling system without the government control. So a large number of national schools were established in East Bengal. Bengal National College was set up at Kolkata. Pachayappa National College at Chennai. In Punjab, the DAV movement made considerable effort in spreading education. So DAV movement, that means Dayananda Anglo-Vedic College movement, it was started in Punjab by a person named Hansraj and all. So their aim was to set up Indianized education institutions. And through various schools and colleges, this Indian education or national education was imparted to Indians without the government's control. Efforts were also made to give education a national orientation in vernacular languages. So in vernacular languages, education was given importance, and in the terms of national orientation, that means whatever they read, they'll be having in that the idea of nationalism will also be made as a curriculum, so that too in the local language. Suppose if I am a Telugu man, so in that, if I am a Telugu man, I'll have a syllabus where I'll be learning about even the, so education was focused on national orientation. That means, so as I'm a Telugu man, if I'm a Telugu man, my syllabus, I'll be learning about nationalism in my own language, so that I can involve more actively in this national movement. So such kind of creative things were designed by these assertive nationalists as a method. See, another important method was passive resistance. You might get confused. There was initially said that active resistance, but now they are saying passive resistance. So here, what do you mean by passive resistance? We will see, there is no difference. I'll say at the end of the topic what is, why they said active in the beginning, why they made passive at the end. Assertive leaders believed in adopting the policy of non-violent resistance. See, they want to show their anger and resistance not by petitions but various other means. But how they wanted to do? They believed that okay, to an extent, non-violence we will follow. First, we will have to follow non-violence. If it is out of our hands, then violence is the last priority. So that's the reason why first they adapted, the historians called it as passive resistance, and they referred it as active resistance. Okay, so in the beginning they should adapt for non-violent resistance. See, burning goods on roads doesn't hurt anyone, right? It just hurts only, it is not harmful to anyone physically. So no violence is happening there, but still the resistance goes in a very strong way to Britishers. So that is passive resistance according to assertives. And vigorous political action means a very strong political action should be always continued. And what for these methods to achieve their aims called complete Swaraj. Political rights could not be won by an organization which could not distinguish between begging rights and claiming rights. So, these assertive nationalists believed that Congress was the organization through which they are working. But Congress, as an organization and party, was dominated by early nationalists who always believed in begging rights but not claiming rights. So it is their right and they can claim them. It is not begging. Who are they to donate to us all these things? It is our right. We should claim it, not beg it. So when we are with an organization where early nationalists were begging rights, it is not possible for us to attain our aims. So they asked people to refuse to cooperate with the government and to boycott government service, courts, schools, and colleges. So instead of begging them, you boycott them. Don't do any cooperation to them. Do non-cooperation. Don't go to government schools. Don't work for government courts, schools. Stop going to government schools and colleges. Join our Indian schools and colleges which are not under the government institutes. They advocated courage, self-confidence, and a spirit of sacrifice. So these new ideologies were inculcated among people by the Britishers. For what purpose? For the goal of Swaraj. Besides the above said methods, there are some other methods used by leaders. What are they? They were revivalism. Revivalism is bringing back something. They wanted to revive self-respect by referring to India's past glory. They planned the national movement on people's religious beliefs. So, what these assertive nationalists felt that there were some great heroes who have always worked for self-respect of India. They never made our India's dignity at the feet of anybody. So, by referring to such people and by referring to our India's past glory or our great history, they wanted to revive that self-respect among people. Already early nationalists have convinced people always to believe in petitions, requesting and all. Now they wanted people also to learn to take back their self-respect, and that how they did planned the national movement on people's religious beliefs. So Tilak revived the Shivaji festival in 1895. You know how Shivaji Maharaj fought against the Mughals. The self-respect now he wanted to teach to all the Maharashtrians. So now what they do, they'll also take the inspiration from Shivaji and they'll try to fight against British. The assertive nationalists presented Chandragupta, Vikramaditya, Rana Pratap, and Shivaji as national heroes whose memory could inspire the masses to fight for their country. The heroic warriors, how great they were in fighting against the foreigners, that inspired people. So this kind of movement, this kind of concepts were also planned by assertives. And personal sacrifices. The followers of the movement used self-reliance and were ready for self-sacrifice, suffering and hardships to achieve the goal. So definitely when they go with guts, they may face a lot of difficulties, but they have to prepare for all those things. So this preparation for personal sacrifice was also used as a method for dealing the British. And mass movement involvement. They had an abiding faith in the strength of masses. They believed this was a huge success. In fact, you can call involving the huge masses of India was a huge success for the assertive nationalists. They will win freedom through only mass action, not by some few educated Indian middle class people. So by influencing them with their sacrifices and suffering, so with all such methods, the assertive nationalists gained so much popularity and attracted the masses in India. So the repressive measures of British. So assertive nationalists, when they were designing such things and they were having a different strategy for national movement, they suffered a lot. Okay, as they have adopted different set of strategy, they even faced a lot of problem. Since the movement for boycott of British shoes was gaining around, government launched a campaign of repression against assertive leaders. All the leaders were arrested because these leaders were trying to provoke Indians not to use foreign goods. If foreign goods were not used, it may cause their economy a lot of problems. So people were arresting these leaders. In 1908, Tilak was tried and sentenced to 6 years of imprisonment. So if these assertive leaders were kept behind bars or jail, the movement will become weak. So that was the plan of Britishers, and they did also. They said to Mandalay prison in Burma. So Bal Gangadhar Tilak was arrested, and 6 years he was kept in Mandalay prison in Burma. Lala Lajpat Rai was also deported to Burma without trial. Not only by sending these leaders to jail, but also all the newspapers which were writing against British, they were censored. That means there were a lot of restrictions on them. Also, there were some kind of associations and all were prosecuted. What activities they are doing and all such things were prosecuted by British government. Thus, they tried to suppress the assertive nationalist movement.